Hi, I'm Ron DeHaas from Covenant Eyes. I'm the president of Covenant Eyes, and this is part of our ongoing Facebook Live on Wednesday at 12:35. We try to do this every week, and I have a couple of special guests with us today that I met at the Set Free Summit last April of 2016. The Set Free Summit, by the way, there's a ton of really cool resources at the Set Free Summit. It was an amazing conference. That was hosted by Josh McDowell Ministries and Covenant Eyes. If you go to setfreesummit.org, you can find all the resources there. I would encourage you to do that if you're interested in just information about this topic. But I'd like to introduce to you Lori and Jay Pyatt, and they hail from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and are here visiting our Covenant Eyes offices today. So I want to welcome you both here.
Thank you.
I want to dive right in because we have a lot to talk about. So, Jay, perhaps you could start talking just about what your story is, why
Sure.
you're here.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us come in, Ron. My story really starts, I was 5 years old. I know I was in first grade. Had a fever. My dad and my brother had already left for work and school. And my mom had a part-time job, and at the time there was not daycare. There wasn't anyone she could leave me with, per se. So she said, stay here, don't do anything foolish, and if you need something, go up and see the neighbor. And as a 5-year-old kid, I think I lasted in front of the TV for, what seemed like an eternity, which might have been 5 or 10 minutes. And I began to explore my house. It was the first time I'd ever been home alone. And I'm exploring my father's desk. I found a couple of magazines in his desk drawer. And that began a 38-year relationship with pornography that over time I battled in many different ways. As a 5-year-old, I didn't know God yet. I met God when I was 10. But I still had some real struggles with this. And my parents divorced when I was 11, so then that led to even more time on my own. And it was kind of my boredom relief or my loneliness relief or whatever it might have been. So it was really, as opposed to having healthy relationships, I was having a relationship with pornography, which is...
at 11 years old.
Yeah, 11. And before that, I mean, even between 5 and 11, there were times I got to be by myself and would still pursue this. Anyway, so time progresses. As a teenager, I became sexually active, and certain things weren't as important. And of course, the internet didn't exist yet, but I could walk into any R-rated movie I wanted to. I was, 6 foot tall at the age of 14, so I could get away with a whole bunch of things that older or younger kids couldn't get away with. And going to college was a big separation from my family, which was not unusual. But college, I did go back to church again. Had a really good connection with God and felt like I had been delivered for a period of about 6 months from pornography. I took it all from my room and I threw it in the garbage and I walked away, and it was, I just really felt like I would never go back to pornography. And 6 months later I was back into it because I really didn't understand the dynamic of why was I free and what do I do to fill that gap and some of those kind of things. And I got married shortly after I graduated college to my first wife. It was not a good marriage. We were married for all of 22 months. Pornography was part of that marriage, but there were times there that I didn't struggle. And coming out of a bad marriage and the Army letting me go and some other things in end of 92, early 93, again, I had an opportunity to look at my life. What do I do now? I have no job. I have debt, and my wife just recently left, so I went back to church, and I went back to a church with a good friend who really showed me a different side of God. And I continued to struggle off and on, and trying to get clean, being single, and just wrestled with it back and forth. And then in 1994, I met Lori, and that was great, and I really wanted to have a relationship with her eventually. We didn't necessarily like each other right off the bat. I was a little difficult to engage with. I had kind of a very stiff personality. So we broke through some of that ice, and that was in about September that we started dating. Mm-hmm. And we were married by the following March, so about 6 months between our first date and being married.
Do not suggest it.
Yeah, yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind,
Yeah.
and I had convinced her that if we, when we get married, it wouldn't be a problem.
Did you believe that yourself?
Oh, I believed that at the time, because I thought, I really connected it with sexual activity.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 28.
Yeah, because I suspect that a lot of young men think this problem won't follow me into marriage. So.
Yeah, and I wrote a post on that very thing once I started thinking about it. And the reason why is all those times that I should have been learning how to relate to another person, I was learning how to relate to pornography. So every time I ran into a challenge with Lori, my wiring, my understanding of how to resolve those issues was not there. And my choice, my actions at that time were to act out with pornography. And again, did all the right things. I went to the pastor and I talked to him, and we went to therapy and we talked to a counselor, and I was reading books and going on men's retreats and having accountability partners and going to prayer meetings and doing all this stuff. And I still was struggling because there was, just some other things that weren't filling in for me. Anyway, wrestled off and on, a lot of more confrontations than confessions. That in our 22-year history, I've only confessed once, but more often it's been her figuring things out and asking me about it, which is not optimal either. But in 2006, I had another major career change, and up until between 2000 and 2006, I was walking relatively clean. I had my accountability partners, but it was, every day was kind of stay away from pornography. It was more of a white knuckle type of approach. And in 2006, when I had this career change, I lost my sense of direction again and fell back into pornography. I wouldn't say deeper, but just more often or more something. But by this time, we got married and the internet came online. Mm-hmm. In 2006, broadband was just starting to become commonplace. And, so between 2006 and 2010, the worst thing I did was I had made Lori my accountability partner in a very strong way. I think the wife can be an accountability partner, and I know Michael Leahy and I are going to have a talk about this, but she needs to know whether or not he's behaving or not. And the reality was, what I was telling her every morning was, I won't use pornography today. And then that night, I would tell her, I didn't use pornography today. And that was 4 years of solid lies. Every day to the woman I love. And if someone else had done that to my wife, that guy would be in a lot of trouble, you know. But because it was me, I gave myself license to abuse my wife's trust, abuse our relationship, and cause her harm. So when she confronted me in 2010, I had already at that point, I was trying to get clean, but I just need one more day to get clean. I need one more day before I tell her, kind of a thing. And I had been clean for maybe a couple of months when she confronted me, and all the lies and all the other stuff came out, and it was just devastating. My sister-in-law lost her house to a tornado a few years ago, and her house was in better shape than our relationship was after this confession. And so around July 4th, we had kind of a conversation. We'll call it a conversation. And July 4th, 2010 was the last time that I put on my record that I had any attachment to pornography. But a lot of that time since has been putting my relationship back together, learning all those skills that I didn't already learn, rebuilding trust. You cannot lie to somebody for 4 straight years and expect them to believe a word that comes out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And, the story then becomes, in 2016, I left my job, and we had talked about, what do we do? What's our next step? And our next step is this, in helping men and women heal from the damage to pornography, rebuild trust, have great relationships, and live bigger lives. That to me is the story now. That's what we've been doing for more than the last year, trying to help guys when we can, and help women. And so has not been the easiest road, but compared to some of the other stuff I've done, this has been pretty much a cakewalk.
Yeah, sure.
So
Lori, now you're on the other side of this. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you, in your marrying Jay, kind of landed in the middle of a battlefield that you didn't even know was a battlefield, that it was already laid down with landmines.
I did. I mean, I can't say I went into it blind. He was very upfront with his struggle before we got married. The thing is, he also lied to me about it not being an issue in his first marriage at all. And so when he said, this isn't going to be an issue for my future marriage because it wasn't an issue in my last marriage, I believed him. And I also thought, he's honest about it, he can talk about it. I'm a big, believer in communication, and, I thought as long as we can talk about it, we can get through anything. We couldn't, though. Right off the bat, it went from him confessing and him, being honest about it, to resistance and a fight, and that was right after we got married. Mm-hmm. And so I kept trying to bring it up, and all the conversations that were supposed to get us somewhere only took us further behind. So eventually I learned, it's trying to talk to him about it only makes it worse, and it became a hot topic, and so I sat on it for years and years. And his first big confessions came at, or at least confrontations, and then revealing the truth, came at like years 2, 3, 5, and 10, I think. And at our 10th year, or at our 15th year, was the big one. And every time I was just like, I've been struggling. You're right. You have been picking up on something. I have been struggling, but this is what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to add this, or start going to this group, or have an accountability partnership with so and so. And honestly, for a woman, that's like water to parched ground. It's like, okay, good. I'm glad you're doing something about it. unfortunately, what he didn't know was it was really hard to get rid of. And there's not, if books could work, then a lot more guys would be free. If accountability partnerships by themselves could work, a lot more guys would be free. It basically takes a different approach. He didn't know that. I didn't know that. So anytime he said, well, I'm going to add one more thing, it's like, yay, now the problem's going to be gone. It didn't work that way, and it was still kind of a hot topic. So when I confronted him at 15 years of marriage, I knew I had to do it differently. At first, I didn't even know if I liked him enough to stay with him, and I really wrestled with God on it. So I realized the problem at that point was already so pervasive, I was going to run into it. If I wanted to be with any guy, I was going to run into it again. Mm-hmm. So I might as well figure it out with a guy who actually wants to be free of it. Because he did. I knew he did. But there was also this part we weren't talking about in him that loved it. It kept going back to it. So so I knew I had to do things differently, and I quit doing it the way I should do it, and because I've always been fairly quiet and accommodating and let me meet your needs and see if that doesn't draw you back out. And so I did it differently, and it was hard. I mean, I've heard anybody starting to deal with this, it's going to be a real storm at first, and it was for us. And even counselors will say any major breakdown will take about 3 to 5 years to get through. I wish I had known that because it was a roller coaster. That it was at first it was 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and then it was 1 step forward, 1 step back, and then we started actually making progress. But it took a lot of effort, and it took a lot of research, and not just the porn issue, but how do relationships work? How do you draw a person into a relationship with you when they're not even sure what intimacy looks like, And so it was tough, but I'm glad we got through it. He was resistant for quite some time, but then I think over time realized, wait a second, I want this too. I want a great relationship too. And then he started investing more and being more open to something bigger than he had before. So
we are with Jay and Lori Pyatt, who just shared their story, and there's much more to share because in this series of Facebook Lives, I'm trying to present resources that people can actually use. And so that's one of our objectives here at this Facebook Live, is to provide resources. We met through a common friend of ours, Michael Leahy. Michael Leahy, I hope you're listening right now. Michael has a ministry that he's been involved with, and he has his own story as well, in mentoring people for relationships to regain sexual integrity. Yes. Michael has a blog. I'm going to put in our comments section a link to his blog. I think he has actually a Facebook Live series. And I'll put links to his work on as well. Plus, we also have we interviewed another couple. If you're interested in this topic, we interviewed another couple, Sarah and Patrick, and I'll also put links to those 2 videos as well. We had 2 separate Facebook Lives with another couple that had this same issue come up. So, Jay, I guess. After hearing your story, what advice would you have for a wife whose husband, and I know there are many wives out there who say that either there's nothing wrong with pornography or they won't address the issue for some reason. So there's a very popular talk show host who gives advice and says, and she's a wife, and she says, this is a natural thing for men to do, to want to view pornography. What advice would you have for that wife?
Well, I would tell her that there's no reason why your husband should have his cake and eat it too. If he wants to, really, if it's damaging the wife enough that she's saying, please stop, and he's not hearing it, then he needs to hear through a little bit more personal pain, which may be sleeping in the other room, sleeping outside, sleeping on a buddy's couch. Because really the wife needs to be empowered to communicate, this hurts, and I expect it to change. I just recently read a book called The Dance Connection that kind of goes along with that. That idea of the woman needs to communicate in a way that the man hears it, or the very last communication is going to be, I'm done with this. I'm so sick of this, you won't do anything. So she needs to be empowered, and she needs a group of people that will come around her to empower her in a balanced way. I want to maintain the relationship with my husband, but I want to set clear boundaries. I need him to go sleep on the couch tonight. And her friends to say, yes, that's the right way to go, without saying, well, set the couch on fire too. I mean, because that's not really what we want to do here. We want to have them have a good relationship, but it needs to be balanced.
So two great things, 2 points that you said. This hurts, and it needs to change.
Yes.
And so I can see that those two would be very valuable, because I think a lot of men don't realize how much it hurts the woman.
Yeah.
And they don't see the need for change. So, so Lori, now just want to turn to what you're doing now.
Okay.
There are so many resources out there. Once the husband and wife even come to the point of recognizing there's a problem here and it needs to change, this hurts and it needs to change. Once you get to that point, there are a lot of resources out there. Tell us what you're doing now.
One of the things I've done, besides becoming a certified mentor, is I've gone through training to, I think, deal with her.
Well, let me interrupt. What do you mean a certified mentor? What do you mean by that?
Going through the Bravehearts mentorship certification program through Michael Leahy.
This is Michael Leahy's program.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I've gone through the trauma training for partners through ABSATs. And that has a different take on this. Typically, what a woman will hear is, you're codependent, you need to clean up your side of the street, you have no influence on... Neither partner can say anything about what the other person's doing. And from what I've seen in my own life, in the life of other people, in the life of other wives, is that doesn't typically work, because she could clean up her side of the street, so, have everything put away neatly in boxes. But if they're close, if they're truly one, then his side of the street is her side of the street. And his mess is impacting her in a way. But if all she's told is, well, you need to clean up your side, this is your stuff. And in a way, it kind of blames her. And I felt that blame. And trust me, when women hear this, they do whatever they can to clean up their side of the street. It's just that painful. They will do anything to make the pain stop. But they can't, because it's not their stuff to clean up. So I've gone through that training so I could help women realize that, because talking about you've been traumatized. This is not about you being codependent. This is about you being traumatized. When they hear that, suddenly it shifts it, because that's something she can deal with. She can get healing for that. She can call him to try to help her get healing with that. So anyway, that's what I'm hoping to help women. That's what I help women with, and that's what I hope to help more women
So this
with.
mentoring program, Jay, are you involved in the mentoring as well?
Yeah, Lori and I were the first couple to be certified mentors with Michael Leahy through this program.
And do you work with couples together or separately? How does that work?
Typically,
We can do, I'll let you answer.
we can do either. Jay has people he's working, or guys he's working with, that I don't work with their spouses, and I have women I'm working with that we're not working on the couple together. Typically, the way it works is we'll work one-on-one individually with, I'll work with the wife, he'll work with the husband for probably 2 to 3 months. And then after that, once everything's stabilized, once we have them kind of reframing their thing, the ways they talk about things, because those can be big triggers, have them thinking about it within themselves a different way so they communicate from that versus communicating the old way, which then, it's the conversation goes nowhere or does damage. So after they're stabilized and they start thinking about it in a different way, and somebody's attending to her pain and legitimizing it and going, okay, now what? Your anger, your anger's legitimate. I would be angry too. I was angry too. Most women are. Let's use that as fuel to propel you into a better relationship, to propel you into a better life. If he's saying he doesn't want to change, let's test that and see if it's true. If he still is resistant, okay, what are the pros and cons of staying? So there are things I do with her on her own. If they're willing to work as a couple, then after that 2 or 3 month period, we'll come together every other conversation, every other week, 2-on-2, and then we'll do 1-on-1 and then 2-on-2 to get them to start working together.
So the mentoring, you're actually working pretty closely, directly with this couple.
Yeah.
Right.
Can it be done remotely, or do you need to? It can be done remotely.
Yeah.
So I want to post your resource then, because I do want to provide resources on this Facebook Lives. What is the best resource to find you at?
My website is called His Porn, Your Pain Healed, and you can find it at pornpainhealed.com.
Mine is porniskillingme.com.
Porniskillingme.com. So you've got both sides of the issue.
Yeah, we're subtle too. I mean, we tried to be very subtle in how we worded everything.
And we have gotten our websites cleared with Covenant Eyes, so it won't be blocked.
Oh, yeah. Well, Covenant Eyes, of course, provides accountability, and so does accountability still play a role? I mean,
it's integral. I want to see the report of the guy, and I want to get permission to let his wife know.
Not specifics, not details.
Right, of course.
Because
to talk to her about it.
Yeah, where Michael Leahy and I agree is she doesn't need to know the specifics, but to some extent she needs to know, is this a thumbs up or a thumbs down, right? And so if I'm looking at his report, I can go, he's thumbs up, we're okay. Or I can say, no, we need to have a different conversation, kind of a thing.
Yes, definitely.
Because she does need to know what's really going on.
I agree. She needs to know, and I also like the model of mentoring that you present, because accountability. My experience with accountability is that it works best when there's a loving relationship that already exists, and that accountability is held between those loving partners. It may not be a husband and wife. It may be a person and his pastor or priest, or even just a friend, but whatever, or parent and child as well.
Right.
But nevertheless, that relationship, and when that relationship has broken down, that's where mentoring and perhaps counseling is necessary to overcome the obstacles that have been built up in that relationship. I always welcome questions, live questions, and I did get a question. And while we're talking about accountability and filtering, this question relates to accountability and filtering. And by the way, if you want to use Covenant Eyes, if you haven't used Covenant Eyes yet, welcome you to try it. If you just, when you sign up, if you use the promo code Facebook Live, you'll get the first month free. So Facebook Live will get you that first month free. But here's the question. There are a lot of filtering programs out there, without accountability. And my experience is filtering programs are quite easy to circumvent.
Yes.
And so the real issue at hand, at least from what you've talked about, is the addiction itself. And this is the question. How do you find healing and freedom from that addiction so that the desire to find a way around the filters doesn't exist? How do you find freedom from this issue?
You upgrade your addiction, right? So instead of being addicted to porn, I live such a tiny little life. I would travel for business. I would spend almost my entire time in a hotel room watching porn. What a wonderful life. That's what I thought as a kid. I want to grow up and be a guy that sits in his hotel room and watches porn. And so my addiction now, or not even my addiction, but the healthy way of living is finding a bigger life, having relationships with people, having a relationship with somebody who matters in my life. And finding, going out and exploring a world that God made for us that is absolutely amazing, even if sometimes you're just sitting in a park, sitting still, watching the wind in the leaves, can be so much more amazing than pornography ever was for me. But the freedom is getting behind somebody who's also been through this and navigated this course. That's the mentoring model, right? I describe it as you're in a dark maze and you have no idea what the way out is, and you run into this wall and that wall and this wall. And because I've gotten out of the maze, I go back in and I find guys and I'm like, okay, give me your hand. This is the way we're going.
Sure.
And because, Michael calls it a Sherpa guide, somebody who can go up the mountain with you and knows, don't step there. Watch that corner over here. Tie off here. All the little things that you need to know to navigate. But the easiest way to get free of porn is just don't quit until you're free. It's just not, it's not easy though when you don't have a big goal, when you don't have a big reason, which again is a good reason for the wife to say, go sleep in the other room. It's motivating.
Yeah, that would be motivating. And it sounds like this type of resource is an essential type of resource, this mentoring program. I'm not aware of a lot of mentoring programs out there. I know Michael Leahy has this. If people are interested in actually becoming certified at this,
Yes.
they can contact Michael Leahy. But I would encourage them, so often, and some of our listeners may actually be in this trap, that there's a relationship they know is being troubled or perhaps even broken by this issue. And it's the relationship that they want. That's what maybe their motivation isn't even to just get out of pornography, but they want that relationship back.
Yes.
And they recognize that pornography is part of that obstacle. And to have someone to turn to and talk to, like you two, would be so valuable. And so Jay and Lori Pyatt here, I would just encourage you, if you're one of those people or someone who is in that trap, where there's a troubled relationship, a broken relationship, to contact these two and get into the mentoring program. It's someone to talk to. You start by talking, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have to start with, just by talking.
Yeah.
And so often, and this is true in any mental disorder or any problem, that sometimes talking about it is a help.
Oh yeah.
And so this is definitely a good place to start.
Yeah.
So, Lori, what advice would you have for women who are now, right now, they're perhaps either new to this issue or new to recovery? What advice would you have for women?
I would
Particularly, they don't even see because they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, they feel
Yeah,
trapped.
I would say first there is a lot of hope. There is really a lot of hope. I know the typical advice is to don't really say anything, don't do anything. But then the opposite advice of go all out and do whatever you can also be damaging. So it definitely, all the tools are out there. You just need to know how to balance them. And you need to stay on top of it. It's going to be one of the hardest things you ever do, depending on, I call them betrayal cycles, depending on how many times he's promised he'll get better, but he doesn't, and then you find out, or he confesses, and then somehow it's gotten worse, it's escalated. The more cycles you go through it, the more difficult it will be to get through this on your own, so you really need a strong support network. With that network, find safe people. If they start sentences with at least it wasn't, then keep looking. If they somehow, if you end up, if you talk to them for a long time and they feel like, you end up feeling like you're still misunderstood or you're still blamed in some way, then keep looking. Because people, your support system want to support you, they want to hurry up and get you to a solution because they see how much pain you're in.
Mhm.
And they'll say whatever comes to mind, yet without knowing a little bit more about the dynamics involved, they can end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to throw a question at you from left field here. If there is a husband, I suppose the situation could be reversed, but usually it's the husband who has this problem,
Yes,
just
true.
statistically. If there's a husband, and whichever one of you wants to answer this, if there's a husband who absolutely refuses, he doesn't even really want to get out of pornography, and perhaps recognizes you say there's something wrong here and it needs to change, and I'm hurt by it. I'm hurt, and this needs to change. And the wife says that, and the husband goes on viewing pornography. What would you say to that?
I would
To
say
that
number one,
wife.
that's super common.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's very, very common. Number two, the type of work I do with women is let's find out if that's true or not, because there are ways. The thing I love about being a woman is we have our ways, and we have, but we can do it in a really, really sweet way. We can do it in a way that brings him out and attracts him and magnetizes him to us, because he's looking for something, and we can provide that. It's just a matter of doing it in a way that doesn't sell ourselves out, that doesn't cause us to say, my pain doesn't matter, all that matters is meeting your needs. Because what ends up happening then is there's resentment builds, and he ends up feeling it, and then it's just, the same old distance that they had before. Mm-hmm. So, again, I think it's very common. I think you can skillfully see if that's true for him or not. Mm-hmm. If he is just blatant about it, then you have some decisions to make. And there are ways to really methodically go through what decisions do I want to make, when is good timing for that. Mm-hmm. If I stay, how do I deal with kind of the backlash that society is going to give me, or my friends are going to give me? I'm in pain, but I'm staying. How do you stand in that? And then it's about drawing boundaries, which are some of the hardest things. It's so easy to say to just start drawing boundaries. So hard to maintain, so hard to maintain healthy ones in a way that brings you life and can possibly get his attention to go, okay, what's going on here? I want to know this woman. She's growing into something that's...
So even if a wife is in that position where her husband absolutely refuses, you're still somebody to talk to. I mean, that at least to give some hope that there's even a choice, a decision to make. Mm-hmm. They might even not even realize there's a decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
Here, so.
Yeah. What she told me was, Jay, I'm going to go live a great life. You're welcome to join me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of after he had resisted quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying, yeah, I want this, but then it would end up being resistant. So there are things that partners can do within the relationship to see if he can start being drawn out.
And I would hope that the wife, if there's someone like that listening, that the wife could perhaps even get her husband to come talk to Jay.
Yeah.
Because Jay can give him the statistics on the effects on the body, on the brain, and so on, and talk about the devastation that it was in your own life and your own relationships. So
right.
That's,
and Jay's kind of unique in that, a lot of people that do this kind of work will help get the guy free. Mm-hmm. What Jay will also say is, when your wife said that, she meant this. So this is what you tell her. Right. And this is how you work out this issue in relationships. We've done a lot of our recovery in rebuilding the relationship through just a ton of different techniques that we found, and now we can share those with others. But he's just unique in that he, even if the guy's just there for himself, they inevitably always bring up the relationship piece, and Jay can speak to that. Even Michael's like, I don't do the couples piece. He's anyway. So.
Well, I appreciate your coming, Jay and Lori Pyatt, because there's so much concentration of resources on the man.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not much out there for women.
No, there's
And
not.
so that's one reason why we're really trying to incorporate women in these discussions, because women need to hear there is hope, there are decisions that can be made, there's hope for complete recovery, and there is a life. There actually is a life ahead. And so I want to thank you for your ministry, for what you do. And I look forward to hearing great results from what you're doing. So I want to welcome you to join us next week on the Facebook Live. It's great to have Jay and Lori Pyatt here. I would encourage you, if you are one of those who's either struggling with pornography, or perhaps you're the spouse of someone who's struggling, and I don't want to neglect the situations where it might be the woman who is involved in pornography. That happens too. And so if you're one of those people who's struggling in a situation, in a relationship like that, that's either broken or it's foundering, I would encourage you to contact Jay and Lori. There's someone to talk to. And so that is the best thing about their ministry, is it's someone to talk to, someone to be mentored by. And so I want to thank you for your ministry. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ron.